You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. And man, the big news keeps rolling in from the SEC. Big news breaking yesterday. In full disclosure, we did our sit-down interview with Chris Marler, which is coming up in just a minute. But we recorded with Marler right before all the LSU Brian Kelly news broke. So I wanted to do an extra segment, start with this before we get to our Chris Marler interview from College Football Uncensored. But the big news, Brian Kelly, Notre Dame head coach, is heading to LSU. So Billy Napier, the new head coach at Florida, Brian Kelly, the new head coach at LSU. And look, there's a lot of people who hate on Notre Dame. There's a lot of people who hate on Brian Kelly. I'm just going to give you facts. You can decide for yourself whether good deal, bad deal, whatever. Over the past 5 seasons, Lincoln Riley, former Oklahoma coach who's now the USC head coach, was 55-10 over the last 5 seasons with 3 playoff appearances. In that same time span, Brian Kelly is 54-9 with 2, potentially 3 playoff appearances. We'll see if Notre Dame makes the playoff this weekend. I would assume Brian Kelly will not be coaching the team. I don't know. You also add in he's got 27 additional years as a head coach on his resume and averaging almost 9 wins a year. Brian Kelly has 263 official wins as a head coach. If you add in his vacated wins, it's 284 wins. Either case, Pop Warner will be the only head coach in NCAA history to start a job with more career wins. LSU just hired one of 6 coaches to make multiple college football playoff appearances, a guy who has gone 44-6 the last 4 years, and he's the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. Keep in mind, Notre Dame history goes back a long way. Look, if you want my opinion, I think this is a home run hire for LSU. Now, you start to wonder about some of the details on the contract. There was one report that came out and said it's a 10-year deal taking him north of $100 million. So $10 million a year. Dennis Dodd reported it's somewhere in the $15 million a year range. It's a lot of money. That's what it took to bring Brian Kelly away from Notre Dame, a spot where he was in a good spot. I mean, why? He never had to leave Notre Dame. He could have retired there. The guy wanted to chase a championship. It's what he will have an opportunity to do with LSU. And I know Alabama fans are going to say, yeah, right, now with us here, and Georgia fans or whatever. The last 3 head coaches of LSU have all won championships. Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron. Brian Kelly looking at it saying, look, I've been to the playoff a couple times. I've been to the BCS title game. Played Alabama, of course, got exposed and lost that game. He's going to have a different caliber player at LSU. We know the talent that Louisiana has. He's recruited very well at Notre Dame. In fact, his current recruiting class right now is ranked 4th in the country at Notre Dame. LSU is about 15th, give or take, with some of the decommitments they've had in the last week or so. If he can get any of those kids currently committed to Notre Dame to swing over to the LSU class, it's going to bump LSU's recruiting class up even more. Now, look, this year you almost give him a pass because transitionally this won't be his recruiting class. This is still kind of Coach O's class. He'll be jumping in with, 2 weeks before the early signing period. I say all that to say, Brian Kelly's recruited nationally at Notre Dame. He's now going to bring that to LSU. If he can do what Coach O kind of did, put up that fence around the state and keep most of the Louisiana kids at LSU, he's going to have a great chance to win games. The recruiting question has been brought up. Brian Kelly has never coached further south than Cincinnati. But again, he's landed Louisiana commitments in 5 of his last 7 classes. So he already has a relationship with the South. And one of the other reports that came out, Corey Raymond, LSU's DB's coach, is expected to remain on the staff. He may be able to keep Mickey Joseph, Kevin Falk, all that's kind of out there. I saw Greg McElroy tweeted. He said, Brian Kelly is one of the best coaches I've ever been around. He wins everywhere he goes, and he does so quick and will do so quickly at LSU. Total game changer. This is a grand slam for LSU football and Scott Woodward. Again, you can have your own opinion. I'm just telling you like it is. I think this is a great hire for LSU. I understand some LSU fans aren't excited about it. Some LSU fans hate Notre Dame. They hate Brian Kelly. And I get it, whatever. Some people questioning the fit. Is there a cultural fit? Look, I think people get hung up on all that kind of stuff. When Nick Saban leaves Alabama, whoever Alabama hires next, they're not going to go, well, does he have ties to Alabama? No, you're going to hire the best coach, period, based on resume. And Brian Kelly has one of the best resumes. There were some people tweeting, man, I wanted Matt Rule, or I wanted Matt Campbell, or I wanted this guy or that guy. Brian Kelly has the best resume of any coach available. And I say available because somebody said, well, what about Urban Meyer? I said, he is currently the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach, and he is unavailable. So realistically speaking, of all the people that LSU could have gotten, Brian Kelly on paper appears to be a home run hire. Now, granted, it's about to get a lot tougher. Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference. They played in the ACC last year for a year. The SEC is brutal. Can you do this week in and week out? Facing the Auburns, the Arkansas, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Tennessees. It's going to get much tougher for him. But I think Brian Kelly is set up to hit the ground running, whereas Billy Napier at Florida, I think, is going to be fine, but he may need a year or so to kind of get the guys he needs. As we know, Dan Mullen didn't do a great job recruiting. Coach O's done a great job recruiting at LSU. First thing he's got to do is get in there, try to keep the LSU kids, the guys currently on the roster, stay, then get this recruiting class in and start hitting that transfer portal and seeing what he can add. So anyway, my thoughts are great hire. Like the hire for Florida. We'll talk about that in just a bit with our buddy Chris Marler. But SEC just keeps getting stronger, man. You now have an SEC West that includes Brian Harsin. I understand some people may be down on him after the last couple of weeks, but should have beaten Alabama in the Iron Bowl last week. He blew it. Sam Pittman just had a phenomenal year at Arkansas, all things considered, with a brutal schedule. Lane Kiffin, if he stays at Ole Miss and Oklahoma or Notre Dame doesn't come calling for him. Mike Leach at Mississippi State. Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, one of the highest paid coaches. Nick Saban, of course. And now Brian Kelly. I mean, it is a brutal SEC West alone. And then let's see what happens. If Kirby wins the title at Georgia, just going to add even more allure to the SEC West, making that much tougher, or SEC East, making that much tougher. So anyway, wanted to give you guys a quick reaction. When we return, we are going to talk all things SEC with our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast.